Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Harold, for that introduction, and thank you for the incredible work that you are doing on behalf of the International Association of Firefighters and on behalf of public safety all across this great country of ours. Before I begin my remarks, I want to take a moment and acknowledge the sacrifice firefighters and first responders make each and every day across this country. There is no such thing as a typical day at the office for folks in your line of work. And while there is service and reward, there is also risk and sacrifice, not only by you, but also by your families. You know, time and again, people always describe your basic mission as this, that when others are running out of dangerous situations, you are rushing in. Unfortunately, we saw just how dangerous that mission is in June of last year when 19 firefighters from a fire department in Prescott, Arizona lost their lives battling a wildfire. In fact, this was the deadliest day for firefighters since the 9/11 attacks. Last year alone, 101 firefighters were killed in the line of duty, according to the U.S. Fire Administration. And each of them was a tragedy. But the tragedy in Prescott really struck home with me. You see, I'm from a small town in Arkansas, also called Prescott. Now, Prescott, Arkansas is nowhere near the size of Prescott, Arizona. In fact, it's about a tenth of the size. But I imagine how hard it would be for my town, for any town, to lose so many brave public servants all at once. I watched the families of the fallen being interviewed, and I read the stories about the firefighters, the so-called hotshots, who were considered among the department's elite. These brave men and women actually rush into the heart of a wildfire to help control the blaze and hopefully stop it. Like we hear all the time, these heroes were rushing into a very dangerous situation. Only this time, many of them did not come out. One of those who perished, Kevin Whitehead, was a third-generation firefighter whose dad is a Los Angeles County captain, fire captain. The 21-year-old hotshot he wanted nothing more than to follow in his family's footsteps. When interviewed shortly after the tragedy, Kevin's father, Joe, said, "Words cannot describe the loss that our family is feeling right now." Well, I agree. Words can never describe how a parent feels when they lose a child, or when a fire department loses a brother or sister, or when this nation loses a hero like Kevin. But what we can do is remember and honor their legacy, their service, and their sacrifice. What we can do is acknowledge the risk that firefighters and first responders face day in and day out. What we can do is demand that our leaders recognize these challenges, these risks, and that our politicians understand why you fight for the things you fight for. Firefighters, first responders, and allies across this country aren't fighting for higher wages, more investments in our fire stations, and the protection of pension plans because firefighters are greedy and selfish. We fight for these things. You fight for these things because a stronger, better trained, better equipped, and more professional firefighting force is how we keep our communities safer and our towns growing, and it is how we save lives. These are not partisan issues, and they shouldn't be. How many times have any of you in this room rushed onto the scene of a house fire and then, before picking up the hose, called the county clerk's office to see if the homeowner was a Democrat or Republican? Never. It's absurd, right? Then why should party affiliation matter? when it comes to supporting our firefighters and first responders. It should not. Too many politicians are putting partisan politics these days above good public policy, and it's got to stop. I spent 12 years in the Congress, and I can tell you the political games and partisan politics are at levels I've never seen before, and I know many of you agree with me. In fact, I was so fed up with Congress that I did not seek re-election in 2012. I got home and realized I wasn't fed up with public service, I was simply fed up with Washington. And that's why last year I made the decision to run for governor of the state of Arkansas. When I was in Congress, I worked tirelessly to bring folks together to put good public policy over partisan politics. I never cared if it was a Democratic idea or a Republican idea. I only cared if it was a common sense idea and if it made sense to the people back home in Arkansas. As a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, I fought for improved communications and interoperability, helping firefighters get the latest communications gear to work with other first responding agencies in emergency situations. Throughout my time in Congress, I voted for more investments to improve and expand training opportunities for firefighters, including the SAFER grants, which has been invaluable to countless fire stations in my home state and across this country. I fully support the SAFER program, and I believe Congress should protect its continued funding. And finally, I stood with you in helping to defend your right to negotiate with your employers and to demand reasonable and fair negotiations that respect the value of your profession and recognize the importance of your work in your communities. On issue after issue, I've been proud to stand with the International Association of Firefighters and its 300,000 members. I've done this, one, because I've got a great relationship going back to when I first served in the Arkansas State Senate 24 years ago with the Arkansas firefighters. I did so because I have a great relationship with the International Association of Firefighters, and I stood with you during my 12 years in the Congress. And finally, I stood with you because I've been quail hunting with Harold here, and he's a pretty good shot. On an issue, I also want to say that I'm running for governor. I'm just as proud that my first endorsement in my campaign was by no other than the Arkansas professional firefighters 2 days after I announced for governor of this state. So a special shout out and thanks to Ed Jaros and all the Arkansas firefighters. One of the other reasons I love Congress is because the gridlock and stalemate in our nation's capital has shifted the fight to our state capitals. Nothing's getting done in Washington anymore. It's happening at the state level, and it's not all good. You all know the stories in states like Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, Michigan, where public service employees in state after state are having the rug pulled out from underneath them. There are elected officials in this country who are so blinded by the rigid political and partisan ideology that they have started villainizing public employees like school teachers, janitors, bus drivers, government workers, police officers, and yes, even firefighters. These politicians are doing everything they can to tear these workers apart. Someone once said that power goes to two poles, those who've got the money and those who've got the people. They know the best way to gain the upper hand is to dismantle workers across the country, one by one, state by state, people like you, members of the International Association of Firefighters. And they've had a few successes along the way. That's why in 2014, we've got to keep our eyes on Washington, but our boots on the ground in states all over this country. Not since the Industrial Revolution has there been a more important time for you all to get involved at the state and local levels in fighting for the rights of workers and to elect governors who respect firefighters and workers throughout this country. Take Arkansas, my home state, for example. We're at the center of the 2014 election cycle. We have one of the top Senate races in the country, one of the top governor races in the country, and 3 of the top congressional races in the country. This might very well be one of the only states in the country where both the Democratic and Republican National Governors Association, congressional committees, senatorial committees each target races and invest heavily. There's a lot at stake. All eyes are on our state this election cycle, and what happens in Arkansas in 2014 will have repercussions across this country for decades to come. At the state level, the Arkansas House of Representatives is up for grabs. Currently, Republicans have control of the House by a 51-48 margin. So 2 seats can make a difference in whether the Democrats regain control of the state House. And here's why that's important. In our state, a simple majority can overturn a governor's veto, meaning it takes 51 votes to pass a bill, and it only takes 51 votes to override a governor's veto. So it is absolutely critical that we elect legislators who are friendly to firefighters and who are sympathetic to the issues that you are fighting for. What all this means is that Arkansas is a true toss-up, but this isn't anything new for people who know Arkansans. We are and always have been fiercely independent. For instance, as the Republican tidal wave swept the country in 2010, our Democratic Governor Mike Beebe won all 75 counties in Arkansas. Today, his popularity is through the roof, and he remains one of the most popular governors in America, which is why I'm proud to have his endorsement in my campaign for governor. The governor's race in Arkansas is critical and will determine if Arkansas becomes a one-party Republican state, following in the footsteps of what's happening in Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, and Michigan, or if Arkansas can remain a 2-party state that respects compromise and rejects the my way or the highway demands we've seen in these other states. As a former small business owner, state senator, and U.S. congressman, I want to use my experience of bringing people together to put common sense solutions over political games. And I will be a governor who really listens and respects the opinions of all sides of an issue, even those who disagree with me. We can't improve the quality of life in this country and in my state of Arkansas if we're talking at one another. It is time for our leaders to start talking to one another. I'm a 5th generation and lifelong Arkansan who grew up in small towns in southwest Arkansas, places like Prescott and Emmett and Hope. My parents were both public school educators, and it's through them that I learned the values of faith, family, hard work, personal responsibility, and always helping a neighbor in need. They are who inspired me to fight for others and to serve my country and my state. My campaign for governor is focused on the future of Arkansas and on helping working families get ahead by improving public education and creating more good-paying jobs. Our message is resonating across the state. We've outraised our opponents nearly 3-1, and in addition to the support of Governor Mike Beebe, we've been endorsed by 65 of the state's 75 county sheriffs and 56 of the state's 75 county judges. And as I mentioned earlier, I am very proud to have the support of the Arkansas professional firefighters. Since both my parents were public school educators, I was also very proud earlier this month when our campaign was endorsed by the Arkansas Education Association, a group that represents more than 12,000 educators and education support professionals in Arkansas. But here's why my race is important to you. My likely Republican opponent, a Washington insider who's hyper-partisan, former Congressman Asa Hutchinson, He has spent more than a decade living and working in Washington, D.C. as a big spending bureaucrat and a registered D.C. lobbyist. He was even a registered Virginia voter. In fact, I think his house was just a few miles from here, Harold. Yet he's running for governor of Arkansas, more than 1,000 miles away. Running for governor again, I might add. He lost to Governor Beebe in 2006. Actually, Congressman Hutchinson has been running for statewide office back home in Arkansas for more than 28 years, and he's lost every single time. Congressman Hutchinson has trouble winning because he is completely out of touch with working Arkansans. Here's how out of touch he is. A few weeks ago, he sat down and interviewed with the Arkansas Education Association to get their endorsement. And when he didn't get it, and they instead backed my campaign, he had the audacity to attack teachers, calling them union bosses, and accused our teachers of putting their liberal ideas ahead of our kids. I tell you all this because Asa Hutchinson is campaigning in Arkansas to be just like Scott Walker in Wisconsin, John whatever his name is in Ohio, Rick Scott in Florida, and Rick Snyder in Michigan. Right now, we're up by 4 points in the latest polls, but this race will be neck and neck all the way until November the 4th. Already, the Republican Governors Association, out-of-state special interest, have spent more than $1 million misrepresenting the facts, distorting the truth, and lying about me and my record. I have no doubt that the same special interest groups and super PACs that are buying anti-worker legislators and governors across this nation will try to do the same thing for Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas. They know better than to approach me because I'm not buying what they're selling. If you don't remember anything I've said today, please listen to this, and you can write this prediction down and look back at it in a few years. If we lose the governor's race in Arkansas, it's game over. There will be no more speed bumps to the anti-worker caravan that is sweeping the nation. Arkansas is a must-win state if we want to draw a line in the sand, stand up for firefighters and our fellow workers, and say, no more, enough is enough, it's time to stop these attacks on working families. We all know governors face tough choices as the executive of a state, but governing is about priorities. You all know my priorities. You have for years. My priority is making sure our kids get a good education with well-trained and well-paid teachers. My priority is making sure working families have the opportunity to get ahead with lower, fair taxes and good-paying jobs. And my priority is making sure our communities in Arkansas have well-funded, highly trained, professional firefighters who will keep our families, homes, and communities safe. Under the incredible leadership here at the International Association of Firefighters, you continue to make progress against well-funded special interest groups and super PACs who will stop at nothing to win. By being here today and by your membership in the IAFF, you are helping to make a difference. And you are standing up for your brothers and sisters in fire stations all across this great country. We are making progress, and we are on the right track. But as Will Rogers once said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So get involved in your communities, in your state, in races across this country. You are needed now more than ever. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, and thank you for all that you do to keep our families and communities safe. When I'm elected governor of Arkansas, I will be one of your biggest advocates, making sure firefighters in Arkansas and across this nation have the resources and support they need to do their jobs and to save lives. You are making a difference. You are America's heroes. May God bless you. May God bless the work you do. And may God bless this great country of ours. Thank you very much.